So today also we are talking about integration of MuleSoft with databases, and in the previous sessions we saw how to query data from databases in MuleSoft. Today, on the other hand, we are going to see how to send data from MuleSoft to databases, or how to insert data from MuleSoft to databases. And we are playing with MySQL and Postgres databases. And we will see how do we insert when we have a single object, which is one row, like in Excel, for example, one row, one instance or one observation, you can say also. And also when we have multiple instances or multiple rows or an array also. And that array, when you send it from Postman versus a common use case, when you have data continuously coming, different metrics coming every day, for example, to a specified folder, and then process that data and insert it to databases. If you remember, before a couple of weeks, we saw how to process continuously coming data and move it around, just save it as CSV, Excel, and so on. Now we are looking at more realistic application. There is data coming in, then we want to process it, and the data that we are interested in, the important part of it only, we want to insert it to data. And I have this code here that I am going to open, and the data that I am using is from the W3 schools data. We have exported that and put it in the course GitHub repo. We have also the Diamonds data. The W3 schools data, we have it in CSV format, and also as an SQL script that you can run and create the database and the tables if you have not done already. So let me open this and show you. Oh, I have it already here, so let me close this and come here. So I have here Workbench and PG admin are open. So let me remove this customers table now. So start from scratch to show you. Drop table here means just delete it, whereas truncate table means delete the rows without the columns. So now let me first drop it completely. Drop table. You can see the SQL code also. If you want to write SQL code, it is simply drop table and table name. So now that table is gone. So first thing is to create a database. We said first we create a database, and that database will have different tables under it. And the database we created in one of the assignments is the Northwind database, for example. It is about a hypothetical company, and it has different tables, including employee, products, customers, order details, and so on. So the same way here also for this tutorial, let's create first a database. We have to create a database, and to create a database, the code we use is create database and the database name. So now if I just copy this and go to Workbench and run this here, I have MuleSoft. As you can see, I have a MuleSoft database here already, but if I don't have it, if I just run this, it will create the database for me. So create database creates a database for us. It is the same thing in MySQL and Postgres. Next, after that, we have to make it a default database so that it knows when we create tables where under which database it should create it. So we use the command we use is use followed by database name. So here, if I go to Workbench, as you can see, MuleSoft is bold. The MuleSoft database is bold. That means that is the default one. Now, if I want to make Northwind as default, if I just right click on it and make set as default schema, then this will be bold and MuleSoft will be just normal. So as you see now, when I write any query, if I don't specify the database name, the tables it is going to try to search them here, and if they are not here, it will give an error message. But if you want to specify which database should be default, you just use put this code and run it. So use MuleSoft. Now you will see MuleSoft will be bold and Northwind will be just normal. So execute this. As you can see, MuleSoft is bold. So now when I write any code, it knows it is going to search it under the MuleSoft database. If it is querying or if it is creating tables also, it will create it under the MuleSoft database. So now let's see about creating tables. So to create tables, we start with this command create table, followed by the table name. Here, for example, we are creating a table called customers. So we put create table name, then we put the different columns. So it has customer ID, customer name. Let me show you the data. We have it already here. So you can also get it. If you don't have it, you can get it from the GitHub repo. So it is this one. Let me open and show you. So it has, I guess, 91 customers. Yeah, 91 customers. And the columns are, let me increase the width here. If I make this 15, customer ID, customer name, contact. Okay, let me also make font bigger so that you can see it. 14. And so these are the columns: customer ID, customer name, contact name, address, city, postal code, and country. So when we create a table, we have to specify the columns here, exactly the way we want them to be spelled. And also we explicitly tell the data type. There are different data types. Int here is integer. So we have int to mean integer. So customer ID, if you see is the Excel file I just opened, it is just, let me close this and save. And this one, you see, it is an integer. It starts from 1 and goes up to 91. So that is an integer. The rest of them are characters. They are string, and varchar means it is string with variable length. So if you see here, like for example, customer name, you see the number of characters is different. So varchar is used to specify that when you have a string with variable lengths. So varchar is one data type, and 255 is the maximum. We are saying, specifying this can go up to 255. If it is something that can go longer, you can put a longer, a bigger number here. If you think it will not be more than 10, then you make it varchar 10 here, for example. So all of them here are string. We don't have numbers, right? Customer name is a number, contact name, customer name is string. All of them here, they are just some combinations of strings. You can also put numbers as strings. Postal code sometimes is purely string, sometimes is purely numeric, sometimes it has letters also. So you can store it. You can store it as string as well. So that is what we are doing here, specifying the data type. Remember, after every column name and putting its data type, we separate them by commas. And the last one, it doesn't have a comma. So basically, comma is for separating the different column names. And the different data types we have in SQL, there are lots of them. You don't need to know all of them, but you can get them from the W3 Schools website. So char is used when the length is fixed. It is string with fixed length. You use char 10, means always it expects 10, whereas varchar 10 is up to 10. And we have blob. This is for images, so this is for binary data. We have all of these are for string. If we come to numeric data types, we have integer and int here, the same thing. And also integer itself, based on the number of digits, it can be tiny int, small int, big int. All of these are integers. It is just the number of digits. And we have for decimals, float and double. Their difference is mainly on the precision or the number of digits. And To understand this more, I think you can also open the SQL script we use it to import the Northwind data and the W schools data to database. So let me open them and show you. Here, under data, go to my SQL, for example. I have this one. If I run this, it will create the W3 schools database in MySQL. And if I run this, it creates the Northwind database. I hope you have done that. If you have not done that, this code, you can get it from the course GitHub repo. Let me quickly go there and show you which ones they are. So this one, basically you can go here, just grab this one and run it in Workbench, and it will create all these databases, the database and all the tables for you. So let me open this and show you, like this one, for example, for the W3 schools database. If I open it, what is this script? What does it contain? So first there is create database here, and the name is W3 schools. And this one, if not exists, means it does that. If it doesn't exist, if it exists, then it skips this. Then you see there is use W3 schools. So we are explicitly telling is the default schema or the default database. Then here we are creating different tables first. So let me just go to the customers table since we are talking about it. There is create customers. It creates the customers table. The columns in the customers table are here, and their data type with its length is specified here. And if there is no value, default null means if there is no value, then it will be null. Whereas the customer ID, since there must be an ID, it cannot be null, is what this is saying. So, yeah, there are different data types. Go read over the W3C website, and also you can go over the scripts we have for importing the W3 schools database and also for the Northwind database, and then you will understand it. The main data types you get are varchar, int, and int, varchar here, text. This is free text. And in some cases you can get blob also when it is an image for binary data. Otherwise, yeah, these are the main data types that you need to know, especially for this tutorial purpose. Knowing int and varchar more or less is enough. Okay, so now if I just go to this code, now if I just copy this and come to Workbench and paste it here and run it here, it will create the customers table for me with the schema. Schema means just the columns and what data type they are. So run this, and under MuleSoft, I don't see the customers table yet. Oh, sorry. Did I run this yet? Because I selected part of it only. Don't need to select it because I just have only one code chunk. If had I had another code chunk below it, then I may need to select only this one. But now I can just click this one to execute everything. So if I do that, we don't see customers under the MuleSoft database. But if we just refresh it, here it comes. So you see customer database table is here, and you see the columns it has in here with their data types. Customer ID is int. Customer name, varchar 255, contact name, address, city, postal code, and country. The same thing, I have done the same thing in Postgres also. So I created that database. Where is it? MuleSoft database is here, and under it, the table here is the table customer. Let me make sure it doesn't have any data. Truncate it. Okay, so now if I just show you, if I run this, it is an empty table. So you see, even in Postgres, it even prints the data type below every column. So you see, customer ID is an integer, customer name is character varying up to a length of 255, and so on. So now once we create a database and a table under it, we can insert data. How do you insert data? Let's see the approaches we have when we have one row versus multiple rows. So when we have one row, what do? They are very similar. When we have one row, we use this command insert into, followed by the table name. Under that table name, we specify the columns, and then we put values, then open bracket, you put the values here separated by commas, and at the end you close it using this semicolon I mean. So if I copy this and go paste it here, so what are we doing? See here, insert into the customers table, which is under the MuleSoft, because we made MuleSoft database default. Then we are specifying the different, let me move this down here. We are specifying the different columns we have. These are the columns, this is the table. Then what values do we want to insert? We put values, followed by, in this bracket, we put the different values. So customer ID corresponds to customer ID. This one is customer name. This one is contact name, and so on and so on. So the order matters. Country is, for example, Germany. Postal code is this one. And then at the end, we close it using semicolon. So if I run this now, first, let me show you that there is no data in that table. Let me remove this. And if you right click here and click select rows limit 1000, it will just show up to a maximum of 1000. But we don't have 1000 anyway. Now it will just show only the columns with empty rows. So if I still click this, you see it wrote the SQL code for me also. You can just write this one. I removed the MuleSoft dot because we have made MuleSoft our database, default database, so we don't need to explicitly put the database here again and again while we write the code. So when I run this, as you can see, you see the different columns, but there is no data there. Okay. Below it, let me paste this one to insert one row. Now select this and execute it. Okay, now run this again to see if there is any data there. You see, this is the row we just inserted. So we insert data to databases using this insert into, followed by the table name, and then we specify the values if it is one instance or one row. If we have multiple instances, on the other hand, we after we put values, every row will be within brackets. So the first one, open bracket, close bracket, this part is one row. We separate each row by comma. This another one, this one is another row, this one is another row, and so on. So in this one, for example, we are inserting with customer IDs ranging from 2 to 10. So we are inserting 9 rows basically. Let me copy it and paste it in Workbench. I think that will be easier to see. So as you can see, this one, we have closed this part of the code. Now paste this here. You see there is insert into the table name, the columns. It is the same like before. Then we put values, and we put the values after that. One row, use customer ID 2 from here. You see the closing bracket is here. We are separating by commas. And at the end, we put a semicolon to tell it that is the end. So this is semicolon. The rest of them are commas. So now if I run this, you will see we will have from customer IDs 2 to 10 added. So run this. And now if we get back to this part of the code, select star from customers to get all the data in the customers table. I do this and come here. You see we have data for all of the rows ranging from customer ID 1 to 10. So this is how we insert data to databases. when we are using for database front-end tools. What about when we try to insert data to databases from MuleSoft? That is what we want to look at today. So come here. So we will build applications that insert data in parallel to both MySQL and Postgres using scatter gather. And we will use two different listeners: an HTTP listener that listens a request that we send from Postman using the post method, and then it will insert to both of them. And the other one is the one that we have been using before a couple of times on new or updated file. So we will tell it, watch this working directory, and if there is new data in that working directory, process it and put it into MySQL and Postgres. So MySQL and Postgres, in this tutorial, we have local versions of MySQL and Postgres, but it is the same thing when you have it in the cloud also. The only thing that changes is the connection. So that is what we are going to do. And when it is single row or one object, we use insert operation. We will see that. However, when we have multiple rows or an array, the insert operation doesn't work. We have to put it inside for each or parallel for each, because insert, what it expects is just insert in MuleSoft. It just expects one row like this one. Where is it? Like this one. However, if you have multiple rows like this one, you use for each. For each is like looping. So for each row, then do something. For each row, insert it to database. So first it is going to insert this one, then insert this one, then insert this one, and so on, sequentially. And there is parallel for each. Parallel for each is, it grabs all of them, and parallelly it tries to insert them. It inserts to the database. So let's see these operations in MuleSoft. Let me make this full screen. So we are going to build these flows. We have 4 flows. On the top left, we have insert a single object to both databases. On the bottom right, we have for each. When we have an array or multiple rows, for each row, insert the data to both databases. On the top right, rather than using for each, we will use parallel for each. As the name shows, parallel for each is used for parallel processing or concurrent processing. And on the bottom right, we are using for each, but we are inserting data from a database. So this is what we will see. So first, let's talk about the for each scope. So the for each scope, as I said, it splits a payload into elements and processes them one by one sequentially. So if we have 10 rows, then each row, it will split it into 10 rows. If we just leave the default, the batch size, if it is 1, then these 10 rows, you can insert them to databases, you can write them as single files, or you can do whatever you want with them. So it is not only, for each is not used only for inserting into a database, but just for splitting a payload and then process each chunk separately. So I took this screenshot from the documentation, and what it is showing is there is a listener and there is a database select operation. Data is coming from a database. Then you may want to write it rather than a single file. You may want to write it into chunks of, for example, 200 or 500 rows, so that you don't make it a very huge data that you cannot even open with Excel. If it is millions of rows, since Excel will not open more than 1 million, maybe you want to save it as a maximum of 250 rows or 500 rows. So what it is going to do is it will first divide it into chunks and write it into separate files. That is what this is doing. In under for each, we have write. In our case, under for each, we will have insert into a database. And the other important thing in for each that we have to know is batch size. As you can see on the screenshot on the bottom, there is batch size. By default, it is 1. So the size will be each chunk, each split will be just 1 row. But you can make it something different also. Like for example, if I have a payload with 1 million rows, if I make the batch size 100, then each chunk will have 10,000 rows basically, because 100 times 10,000 is 1 million, right? So the payload, it is going to be divided into 10,000 batches, and each batch will have that batch size, which is 100 in this case. So you can practice with this one to understand it better, because in the hands-on, we'll see only inserting data with it to a database, but you can practice with other things also. And they have added an assignment here that you can practice by yourself and also in your study groups. So the assignment is, we have the diamonds data. It is in CSV. If you have not downloaded it already, download it from the GitHub repo. Then using the file module, read it, and then save it as multiple files, with each one of them with 2,000 rows. I think the diamonds data, it has close to 1 million or more than 1 million rows. So read it in, then transform it to, it asks you to save it as CSV, JSON, XML, and Excel. This one, all of these concepts we have covered in the previous classes. So read it in, and then save it as multiple files to practice, to understand the for each scope better. But in our case, we will use it to insert data to the database. Okay, and the other one is parallel for each. Parallel for each is the same as for each. It divides the data into chunks, but rather than processing it sequentially, one after the other, it is used for concurrent processing or for parallel processing. So especially when you have relatively larger data, it will be faster than for each. So the main difference between for each and parallel for each scopes is, one is sequential. It is used for sequential processing for each, whereas parallel for each is used for parallel processing. And this one, the project that we are going to see in this class, I have pushed it into GitHub. It is that one, insert into databases, MuleSoft project. As you can see, we have created multiple projects so far. Make sure you are creating all of these projects and practicing. And if you encounter any issues, and if you can you? Oh, I'm muted. Can you hear me? Salam?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No problem. Okay. So we have created all these databases, and make sure, these MuleSoft projects, make sure you do the same and build your own portfolio as well, and also practice the concept. You understand it better through the hands-on tutorials rather than simply listening to the concepts and reading about the concepts. So that one is a project that we are going to create today. And what do I have next? So next we have step by step how to create the project and insert the data to the databases. I think let me first take questions about inserting to database here, about inserting data to databases, and also the concept I talked about for each and parallel for each. So let me unmute you and take questions. Does anyone have any questions about inserting data to databases, or creating tables, creating database, and inserting a single row versus multiple rows, and the different data types? let me see. How many of you, by the way, let me see. How many of you have installed MySQL and Workbench? Can you give me thumbs up if you have done so? Okay, only 11 people. Okay. Okay.
Hi, Fish. I have a question.
Sure.
My question is, I see there are two. One is the workbench, and I see another text editor. They call it Pop MySQL. Which one is better to use? There are. It is. I guess it's text editor. The Pop MySQL.
I see. Yeah, there are different text editors and front-end tools, and they are easy to learn. I have never used the one you mentioned. I used Workbench and other things, Jupyter Notebook and R Notebook and so on. So I'm not sure, but for sure Workbench is very commonly used. If you practice with Workbench, you will be good. Okay, another question. I see 3 people raising their hands. Okay. John? John, do you have a question?
No question.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So yeah, practice about inserting data to databases. Make sure you practice and go over the W3C tutorial. You have all the code that we use it to insert the data to W3C and also the Northwind. See what is happening by looking at the code. This will help you really to understand at a high level what is happening. So next, then we will see, let's see, the MuleSoft projects. I have them here. Okay, so I have 4 MuleSoft projects built already. Let me start from the top one and explain one by one. So we have an HTTP listener here as usual because we want to send the data from Postman, and the path is insert single. We want to send a single object, not an array, a single object, which will be a row or one instance. Then we are using scatter gather, and we have the insert operation. You can get it from the database module. There is this insert operation. And once you put the insert operation here, you have to connect to MySQL and Postgres. We have covered that 2 times so far, so you should already know it. You should already know how to connect to MySQL and Postgres. Watch the previous videos and also go over the slides. So here I am connecting to MySQL and Postgres, and the code I have for both of them is the same because I am inserting the same data to both of them. So what are we doing? See, there is here. Let me copy this so that it becomes easily visible. So it is very similar to the code we saw to insert to the database from Workbench. So there is insert into customers, which is a table name. It is the same thing. Then we have the column name is specified here, as you can see. Then we put values. Then after that, we open bracket. Within bracket, we put keys, different keys. This is the same as what we saw when we query data from databases in MuleSoft. So you use colon followed by keys. So customer ID here is a key, customer name is a key, and so on. And the values of the key, we specify it in the input parameters. So if I copy this and paste it here, you see this customer ID is a key, which is this key, and its value will be payload.customer_id. So this assumes the payload will have these keys. The data we send from Postman or data that we read in, it has to have these keys. If it doesn't have these keys, then the rows will be null in the databases, basically. So this is very similar to what we saw when we were selecting. And when we select data from databases, this insert, this part, input parameters part was the same. The only thing that changed is this part. So here it was select star from table name and where then we provide some criteria there, where the column is greater than this value, or where the column is in this list, and the values that we specified them as keys. So that's the same thing that we are doing. So if I get back to here, in here we assume we are going to send a single object. That single object will be inserted to both databases, and at the end it will send a response that the data has been inserted into both databases. Whereas in the second one, we have the second flow that you see here. In here we are using for each. So this one is used for array. If you send a single object here, it will not work. I mean, because it is going to divide each column into its own. It will split each column as a separate object. So for each is used for array. That means usually when you have multiple rows, then each row will be it will split each row into an object, and it will insert each row into the databases. So this is for each. The only thing is we put for each. It is under the core module. We have for each here, parallel for each here. So you grab for each and under it, you just copy paste this. The scatter gather with all the insert operations, you paste it there. The connection and everything will stay the same. And the path here, I'm calling it insert many for each. Insert many with for each. The other one, the third one, is the same thing. The only thing that changed is here the scope, rather than for each, it is parallel for each. So we say it parallel for each, it inserts the data in parallel. So especially when you have relatively larger data, medium-sized data, parallel for each should be faster. Otherwise, when it is big volume of data with millions of records, we use batch processing that we are going to see next week. And finally, we have this one. The last flow, the parallel for each didn't change. The only thing that changed is the HTTP listener source trigger. I replaced it by the on new or updated file trigger from the file module. So under the file module, we have been using this one, and we know how to specify that from the previous tutorials. So in my case, I'm telling it what my working directory is. So I have this working directory. It should closely follow this directory or this folder. And if there is data in this folder, then it should process it and insert it to the databases and back it up to this one, to here. We did this before a couple of times. The only thing is now we are inserting it to databases. So these ones are what we are going to experiment today by sending data and see how it works. If you have questions, I will take one of the questions, then we will have a break. And after 10 minutes, we get back, run this and test it from Postman. And it is a customer's data. And let me first make sure there isn't any data in that table. So remove this. If I run this now, as you can see, there are rows. But if I just write truncate customers, it is going to drop the rows. Truncate customers like this, or I can just right click here and click truncate to drop the rows. So run. Now if I run select star from customers, there isn't any rows, as you can see. We have only the columns. So now we will insert data to the database from MuleSoft by sending data from Postman for the first case. So I have Postman here. Let me remove this. And by the way, if you have already created the W3 schools database, this is a customers table that we are practicing with. So to help you insert, copy paste the data as JSON in Postman, you can export it like this. If I do right click, select rows, limit 1000. You see the data is here. Then here, to export the data here, there is this export button here, or save button. If you click this, you can export it as CSV, which is a default, or in these different formats. JSON, XML, and Excel are there. So let's export it as JSON. I have exported it already, W3C customers, W3C school, W3 schools customers data as JSON, as you can see here, or replace it now. Then if I go to that folder and open it, it is under data, this one, open it with text editor. So it is this data as JSON. So if you have it as JSON, you can just copy paste it to Postman to send the data from Postman to the database. So let's send a single object. So insert, we use it to send a single object. So it should be as an object, not as an array. So copy this. I don't need a comma. Go to Postman, under body, paste it here. If the data type here, if it is text by default, make sure it is JSON. And the path here is, I think it was insert single. Yep, insert single, copy this, bring it here. Paste it here. So let me also check in Postgres, make sure I don't have that data. So if I run this, in Postgres also we don't have any data. Now from Postman, when I send this request, then I should get one row in both Postman and MySQL. So click send. Oh, here, I should remove this comma. That's why it gave an error. Click send. As you can see, it returned a message, data inserted into MySQL and Postgres. This message is what we have in here. This is a message. Now, if I come to here, to Workbench and run this, oh, okay, not this one. I need to run this one. Default is MuleSoft, so if I just run now this one, I should see one row. You see, we have one row. We can also send another one. Let's send this one. Paste it here. Now I will have two rows that are inserted into MySQL and Postgres. Come here, run this again. I have two rows. Let's check in Postgres also. Initially, I didn't have any data. Now I should get two rows. You see, we have two rows. So that is the insertion, a single object. The first flow here. This one. Okay. That's the first flow. Now let's see the second one. The second one is insert for each. So in here, it expects an array. It should work also when we have a single object, if we give it as an array. So to use this one, let me show you first. Let me truncate this. Let me remove the data. And if I run select star from table, there is no any data here. The same thing. Let me drop truncate customers. We said this is not case sensitive. The SQL commands are not case sensitive. So I truncated it. Now if I run this, there is no any data, as you can see. Now let's see the second flow to insert data to the database, which is this one. Insert meaning for each. So if I copy this path to here, I can insert this one also, the single object, but I have to make it an array. So this is an array of one element. Still, it should work. It will just insert the first one and stop. Like this, also it should work. But if it is not an array, it will not work. So you see, it has been inserted. Now if I come here, select stuff from customers, you see that row. Let's check if I remove the square brackets. Let's see what happens. If I do like this, it inserted each one separately and we will have null values. So if I come and run this is what we see. So for each workers with an array, you have to put it as arrays. If it is an object, then what it is doing is it inserts each key value pair separately, and the rest of them will be null. So anyway, remember when you use for each, it should be an array. Okay, so let me drop this. Go to Postgres also and make sure there isn't any data there. So let's send multiple values in an array and send with insert with for each. So I can just select the whole of it. You see, it starts with square bracket on the top here. And if I go down also, there is a square bracket. So this is an array of JSON objects. Copy this, bring it to Postman, and paste it here. Now this one should work fine. Each object will be inserted. It will first split it into the separate objects and insert each object sequentially. That's what it is. The for each is going to do. So click insert. That's why you see it's taking some time, even if there are only 91 rows, because it is inserting each one of them separately. And you can see status updates on the console also. You see it shows us that it is inserting the data. There are better ways to handle when we have especially large volume of data, but it is good to understand this concept also. So now, if I go to Workbench and run this select stuff from customers to check the number of rows, I should get 91 rows. Come here, it has inserted all of it. If I scroll down, see we have all 91 rows. Can check in Postman in Postgres also. If I run this, see it has inserted all the 91 rows. So this is for each. The other flow we have is parallel for each. In our case, they don't have much difference. Even the parallel for each could take more time when you have less data than for each. We will experiment in our next class which one to use based on the data size we have. But here, the for each, I replaced it with parallel for each, and the path I have is p for each. So come here, add p here, and let me drop the rows, truncate them. From here also, truncate them. Make sure there isn't any data. No data here. No data here. So now let's send again using parallel for each. Send. So what it is doing is it is going to insert each one of them in parallel, and it will return information about what it did for each chunk. In this case, data insertion response. So if I do like this, as you can see, it is inserting the data, each one of them in parallel. This one has a little bit of overhead, especially when you have small data. So it doesn't mean it is necessarily faster than for each, especially when we have small data that it is inserting. It seems even it took longer than for each. And the reason is it has this even, it is printing the status. You see the data inserted into database successfully is displayed here multiple times. This is maybe there are 91 of them. This is for each split. It is giving us a status update. I'm not sure what this one is. I will check what it is, or you can check why we are getting this status update. If we come to the console, what do we see? If I come here, yeah, these weird characters that don't render in Postman, they are not there in the console. But anyway, it shows it successfully inserted them. And now if you come to MySQL and check also the number of rows, again, you should get 91 rows, as you can see here. The 91 rows, you can just click this to sort it, and it starts from 1 to 91. In Workbench also, in my pgadmin, the same way, if I run the select stuff from customers, let me order it by order ID, order by customer ID, customer ID. If I run this, it will be increasing order. So it starts from 1, and we see it has inserted all of the rows. So we have seen for each, parallel for each, and inserting a single object as well using just standalone insert. Okay, the last one is insert newly coming data. So first, let me go here and truncate them again, so there isn't any data, so that we can make sure we are inserting data the right way. If I run this, it will not have any rows. The same way in Workbench also, if I run this, since I have truncated it, there should not be any rows. Now, if I show you for the on new or updated file trigger, my configuration or my working directory is this. Okay, this working directory should be my working directory. Wait, my working directory is this one. That one is my working directory. And if okay, and I have a backup location also. I'm telling it to back up the data to here and delete it from original location, and it will check this every 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 second. Let's make it 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds. Other thing is also, we have seen this before already, I want it only to pick only JSON files. So asterisk.json means all files that have JSON extension, and yeah, that's all. So save this, and then it should grab the data and insert it in parallel to both databases. This has more a real-time application, because you will have data coming in, and you don't want a human being to sit there and run the same code every day or every hour if it comes hourly, or even monthly. You can just schedule it, and then your application will take care of that. So my directory is this one. There isn't any data there. Let me copy paste customers data, W3 schools customers data. I have the backup also. Let me remove from the backup and insert it here. If I insert it here, after 10 seconds, it is going to be deleted from this location, and we will see the data inserted to the databases. If I come here in the console, you see it is processing data. And if I come to the folder, that this data will go, yeah, it went away after 10 seconds, and I should get it in the backup location. It is here. Now, if we come to the database and run this code, I should see the data there. Here also the same way. Before there was no data. Now it should come here. Click here to sort it. We have all the data inserted. And usually we have data continuously coming in, and we can copy paste the same data file and see if it inserts it again and again. So I will call this just add A and cut it from here and paste it from here. So the customer IDs will be duplicated basically, because it is the same data. And this will be moved to the backup location, because I deleted it I cut it from the backup location. Where is the backup? as it is not here, after the data is inserted, then we will get it here. And you can use the previous Python code that we were using to generate continuously coming data also, and experiment with this if you are interested. So this way, now the number of rows should be double. If I come to here, here you see now we have 91 rows, but if I run this now again and sort it by customer ID, I should get duplicates because I inserted the same data 2 times. So you see customer ID 1 duplicated 2 times, 2 duplicated 2 times, 3 duplicated 2 times, and so on. If I go to PG admin, also the same way, if I run this, I see duplicates because I inserted it 2 times. So this is very important concept that has real-time applications. Make sure you understand it well, practice with it, make sure you do the hands-on. And in our next class, we will understand which of the scopes to use, when, and also their mule event structure, how the mule event structure changes with each one of them is what we are going to see next time. But I think for today, let's spend more time just discussing if you have any questions about this. Or do you want me, so the reason that I am building the application first and just to spend time explaining the concept is because I have already shared it in the GitHub repo and also have the step-by-step instructions of Google Slides. So that is why I'm not building it again here. But if you think that building it together here helps you to understand it better, I am open to that also.